Okay, would you like to state your name?
Sure. My name is Rod Burnett. I'm a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel.
Okay. What is your family background?
My family background is I grew up right here in Jefferson City. My wife grew up here in Jefferson City. My wife actually went to Helias High School. I went to Jefferson City High School. And I joined the Marine Corps out of college and was in the Marine Corps for 20 plus years, traveled all around the world, and what a great experience that was.
Okay. Did you have any other jobs before entering the service?
I did have. I actually, when I graduated from college, I went through an electrician's apprenticeship. I came from a big blue-collar family, and my grandfather and my dad, I was the first kid from my family to go to college, get a degree, but they felt like, hey, you got to get a trade too. So I went through electrician's apprenticeship and then went in the Marine Corps right after that.
Were you drafted? Okay, well that answers the question, I guess. Were you drafted into the service, or did you enlist into the service?
Yep, I enlisted. I enlisted into a Marine officer program. The Marine Corps has several different programs. This was called the Officer Candidate program. You had to have a college degree. You had to take some physical fitness tests. You had to be screened academically, and then you had to go before a board, and they chose whether or not you could participate or not.
Was there a reason you enlisted?
Yes, I always wanted to serve my country. I always wanted to be a Marine. I love the challenge that the Marine Corps puts toward you. Even today, if you go to any of the services, one service may offer you some education benefits. Another service may offer you the opportunity to do a certain job in the service. But the Marine Corps will offer you the opportunity to try to become a Marine. And that's all they're going to offer you. So that challenge was what really drove me towards the Marine Corps.
Okay. What type of training did you have to go through?
The Marine Corps is known for their training, even at the very the basic training all the way up. So I went to typical it was a 10-week officer candidate training course where we lost about 45% of the attendees, either due to injury, dropped on request, or other physical injuries. So you start with that, and then the Marine Corps is the only service that has what's called the basic school for officers. And all Marine officers, no matter what MOS they're going into, are trained at the basic school to be infantry officers first. And that's a 6-month training school where you do everything from live fire exercises, you shoot all of the weapons in the Marine Corps, you call in close air support. It's an extensive training school.
What is your most exciting part of your training?
The most exciting part of my training was I was parachute qualified, so I actually went to an Army parachute school for that when I was in an airborne unit. So, I mean, when you jump out of that airplane for the first time, it will get your attention.
What was the most important and useful part of your training?
The most important and useful part of the training was, one, it honestly prepared me for every situation that I went into as my Marine Corps career, as I was deployed, mainly in the Middle East, but also in Haiti and throughout the Mediterranean. So I can honestly say, when I went into these very precarious situations, that I was very confident in what we were doing. I was very confident in the Marines that I was working with, and most of that boils down to that prior training before you go.
Okay. What was the hardest part of the training?
The hardest part is it never stops.
Yeah, the whole thing.
I mean, it's 10 weeks. It starts at 4 o'clock in the morning. It goes to well after dark, and and it's just continuous. I mean, you actually get to a point, and I can remember getting to a point where you were standing in formation and you would just, you were about to just to nod off just because you were so tired. And that's part of why, you know, in the Marine Corps they had such a high attrition rate, because people would just finally just say, hey, that's enough, I'm done.
What would you say the best part was?
The best part of my military service or the training?
The training, and the worst.
Okay.
Like, hardest.
The best part of the training was, one, just developing that confidence that like I said, whenever I was done, there was no situation that I felt at the time. Of course, I was younger then, and maybe a little naive, but there was no situation that I didn't feel like they could place me in that I couldn't overcome. And you know, and that paid off later on in real world operations. And what was the least part?
Yeah.
The least part was some of the mundane stuff. I mean, don't kid yourself. In every military branch of service, there's always something, whether you have to go to dental or something like that, where you have to stand in these lines and just, you know, that mundane stuff. Luckily, the Marine Corps is more about the action and not so much the mundane part.
Did you have to receive any special training?
I did receive special training. The parachute training was special. I was a weapons and tactics instructor. It's called a WTI in the Marine Corps. I received training it's called Tactical Air Control Party training, to learn how to call in close air support.
Do you remember any of your instructors, and what were they like?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially my boot camp instructors. I mean, these guys were just hard as nails. You know, like I said, we would start at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they would be there every day. You know, and they're ready to go. They're fresh. They're pushing you to push yourself. And then I had instructors in that weapons and tactics instructor course that I talked about, who were just the consummate professionals, who knew the weapon systems, knew how to teach you how to employ the weapon systems, and were just very professional about what they did. Now, I also went through I was a jump master. A jump master is a guy who conducts parachute operations, and I actually had the 3rd Special Forces group from the Army. I went through a 3-week course to become that jump master with them. And what I noticed about them is that they were very professional. They knew their business inside and out. They were not real rah-rah, kind of like some of the Marines that I had experienced, but they were just matter of fact on how they did their job, and were very, very good at it.
What was your first assignment after basic training?
My first assignment after basic training was to Hawaii. And in Hawaii I was attached to a Marine Air Control unit there. And that's actually the first unit that I deployed with when I deployed to Desert Shield and Desert Storm in the Middle East.
Could you tell us about some of the promotions you had, if you received any?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I started out as a 2nd lieutenant. I was promoted to 1st lieutenant in Hawaii. I was promoted to captain then when I had moved on to North Carolina to a unit called 2nd Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company, Anglico. So then as a major, I was promoted at the Pentagon. I made major at the Pentagon, and then lieutenant colonel after I had left the Pentagon.
What was the hardest part of adapting to the military lifestyle?
You know, I think it was I look back on it now, and for me it was, I really enjoyed the Marine Corps. I enjoyed doing everything that I got to do. I enjoyed the variety of getting to go different places and do different assignments. And I look back on it now and I think about my family and my wife and just the hardships that they had because, you know, like I can remember one time we moved to North Carolina from, it may have been Washington, D.C. Moved into North Carolina. We had boxes all over the house. Because, I mean, I think we moved a total of 13, 14 times my whole time in the Marine Corps. But this time we had just moved in. The moving company had just dropped off the boxes. You know, it's a mess in the house. We have 3 kids at the time. Jake wasn't born yet, but I think my wife may have been pregnant with him. And I get a phone call, and it's like, "Hey, Rod, you got to come in to work," because I was at home trying to get set up. And they said, you're leaving tomorrow, and we got to tell you where you're going and what you're doing and all that. So I left. Yeah. I got on ship the next day, and we went. It's called a Special Purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force that went into Haiti. But I was gone for 5 months, and when I came back, of course, my wife had the house completely set up. Everything was going as normal. You know, she's taking the kids to school. So, I mean, my wife is truly the rock of my family. And she basically raised my kids, did a great job. And I look back and I think that's hard. That's hardship, yeah. You know. Because I was out there doing my thing in the Marine Corps, and she was taking care of business at home.
Where were the places you served, and were some of them similar to each other, or were they all like totally different?
Yeah. So I served in Hawaii, I served in North Carolina, I served in Washington, D.C. At the Pentagon. I served in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq. I served all throughout the Mediterranean Sea, into Bosnia-Herzegovina, Haiti I talked about, where else? Israel, yeah. Lots of different places. And I think probably, honestly, I enjoyed, like for my duty stations, like the ones within the United States. I really liked Hawaii, of course. I mean, my wife and I didn't have kids at the time. That was my first duty station. So it's my wife and I living in Hawaii, just having a ball, enjoying ourselves, you know, getting ready to start our new family there. Then we moved to North Carolina. I found North Carolina to be a lot like Missouri, our hometown, home state, which I really liked that. You know, when we lived in Washington, D.C., we actually lived about 30 miles south of Washington, D.C., in Stafford, Virginia. And I would have to make this commute, this 30-mile commute, every day up to the Pentagon and back. And I mean, it was an hour commute one way in the worst traffic you'd ever seen. I mean, it was interesting. But I learned so much at the Pentagon.
Weren't you there during 9/11?
I was there during 9/11. I was just getting to that.
Yeah. Sorry.
So at that point, I had been on three combat tours. And I thought, all right, I'm going here at the Pentagon. It's going to be interesting. It's kind of a desk job. And then 9/11 happened, and they flew the aircraft into to the Pentagon. And it was the most scary time. You know, some of the combat was more scary, but I think the scariest part was the sense of unknown.
Yeah, you didn't know
what's going to happen next, you know. Because, I mean, they flew that aircraft right into the Pentagon. Now, luckily, I'm on the direct opposite side. So our plan at that time was, you know, all of the services work in the Pentagon, but for us, the Marines, we were to meet at a certain location out in this big parking lot. And we did that, but I mean, it was mass chaos because they were trying to get the people out who were you know, stuck in there and everything. And I managed to make my way home. I mean, they shut down the entire city. Mm-hmm. So like nothing was running. They shut down the interstate. People were walking down I-95, which is one of the busiest interstates in the United States. And, you know, you would just see bands of people just walking because you didn't have a choice. So I finally made my way home, got home, and I'll never forget my neighbor. My neighbor's kids were over there at our house, and both of them worked in the Pentagon. and it got to be like 10 o'clock at night, and it's like, oh my God, they didn't make it, you know. Thank God they, you know, about 11 o'clock, they showed up, knocked on our door, and got their kids. But I thought for sure that they were one of the unfortunate ones who didn't make it.
Dang.
So I still go to the Pentagon today. I mean, I go, they have a memorial set up, and it's right on the side where the plane impacted, and you know, you just go there and you remember the ones that lost their life there.
What did your wife do? Like, did she like call you? Was she scared when she like heard about it?
My wife, it's funny, yeah, she was scared, but she, for whatever reason, I had told her that morning, you know, I would leave the house like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I said, hey, you know, I got a meeting outside the Pentagon this morning, and she said she remembered that. She remembered that I was not actually in the Pentagon, but just outside.
My first thought would be like, oh
in some buildings. Because, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Russian roulette, because the Pentagon is just it's a Pentagon, and it has connecting hallways all the way around. So wherever you work, you have to walk that way anyway. So, you know, it's just luck of the draw when that aircraft came in, where you were at and where you weren't.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How did the wartime change you as a person?
It made me very guarded. You know, you come back from combat, and you know, I can remember coming back here to Jefferson City, and I can remember driving down High Street, and my wife said, "What are you doing?" And I was looking at the rooftops, you know, just because it was just a habit, you know, looking for people. Yeah, for threats, and so yeah. But honestly, you know, you come back, you get settled into your life, and it's good. Does it affect you? It does. Is it overwhelming? Not at this point. Not at this point.
What kind of friendships did you make during this time?
Tremendous friendships. I mean, it's funny, you know, Veterans Day was this weekend,
Yeah,
so I had, thank you, yeah. So I have a certain group of Marine buddies that we get together every so often. One of them is in Stuttgart, Germany now. The other one is in San Antonio, Texas. And, you know, we're talking back and forth, and you meet some phenomenal people in the military, and I've met phenomenal people in all branches of the service. I've had the opportunity as a Marine to work with a lot of different soldiers, sailors, airmen, and even the Coast Guard. And they are just selfless people who want to do the right thing, and they want to help. They want to help people. I can remember one Veterans Day, I gave a talk at St. Joe, and Caleb Davis, you know Caleb?
It's his birthday.
Yeah, Caleb asked me, you know, and Caleb was a young boy then.
Like 4'1".
He said, Mr. Burnett, you know, how many people did you hurt in the when you were a Marine? And I said, Caleb, I said, I feel like I helped more people than I ever hurt, and I honestly I believe that. I mean, even in combat, you have the opportunity to change people's lives. You have the opportunity to help people, and I think that's what I take away. I choose to focus on the positive.
Yeah.
How did you stay in touch with your family and friends?
So, you know, the whole texting and all that was not, you know, Facebook and all that, we did not have that.
Yeah.
And so I honestly didn't keep in touch with them that much. I mean, I would get in a position where I could call them maybe once a month, something like that. But, you know, I've talked to my wife about that, because they would get mad at me because I wouldn't reach out to them as much. And I tried to explain to them that it was harder for me.
It makes it worse.
It did make it worse for me. it was harder for me to call and talk to them and then have to go focus on what I had to do. So I really preferred, and again, this kind of goes back to my wife being the rock. I found that it was easier for me to go away, do what I had to do, and then come back when I was done, and reinsert my life back into my family life. Maybe not the best way for everybody. Maybe not the best way now with all of the different communication tools that you have, but it worked for me at that time.
Was there anything you said or did for like good luck, or like superstitions or anything?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think.
You don't have to tell us.
No, we always had our little things that we would do. One thing that kind of goes hand in hand with that. I remember it was a Sunday where I was at. Yeah, I'm not sure what it was back here in the States, but it was a Sunday afternoon. We were getting ready to go on this operation, and I would just think about my family, both here in Missouri or wherever my Lori and my kids were at the time. They're probably having a barbecue. They're sitting out having fun, and they have no idea what Dad's getting ready to go do here. So I don't think that's superstitious, but that comes to mind.
Do you remember anything humorous or unusual during your service?
Yes, yes. So I was on this parachute operation, and we were jumping out of helicopters. So we were in 4-man sticks.
I could not do that.
So I was the number 3 guy, and there was a number 4 guy behind me. So he jumped too quick. So he ends up right in the middle of my parachute. So we're falling out of the sky together. We're in North Carolina, and North Carolina has these huge pine trees. And I remember looking down, and I see these pine trees just screaming up at me. So I start working my reserve chute. This other Marine is still tangled up in my main chute. We're falling out of the sky. So then I look down to see where that pine tree is, and that pine tree, the top of it is right there. And then my reserve chute caught, just poof. But it broke our fall enough, and we crashed down through that pine tree, just bam, 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 bam. Hit the ground. The Marine who was balled up in my chute hit the ground next to me. He looked up at me and he said, "Are we alive?" And I said, "I think so."
Oh my gosh.
So maybe not funny at the time, but after we thought about it, yeah, it was funny.
My gosh. What did you do during your free time?
Free time while I was deployed
Or did
in
you
combat?
have free time?
Yeah, we did have free time sometimes. Oh, honestly, back then you wrote a lot of letters because you didn't have all the communication skills. And the letters were cool. I mean, you kind of lose the effect now, but I mean, getting letters from your family was like a big deal. And so we'd read our letters, talk about our family. That's about it, really. Wasn't a lot of free time. I mean, that is one thing. When you're deployed like that,
sleep if you
when you're deployed like that, you're working every day. Now you may get off a half a day on like a Sunday or something like that, depending on what's going on. But every day is it's good when like I said, it's good when it's finally over and you just come home and you start again.
Was there a best part of your service?
The best part was the variety of things that I had the opportunity to do. I mean, from living in Hawaii to deploying to Haiti to seeing how other countries, operate to meeting great Americans and working with great Americans who are as selfless as you are, and all they want to do is is do the right thing, get the mission accomplished, and make sure that everybody comes home safe, to including you. And yeah, I think that's probably it.
Was there a worst part of your service?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll come back to that one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you remember the day that your service ended?
I do remember. So my wife,
Oh gosh.
my wife again. So my wife came to me and said, you know, I was coming up on 20 years to retire from the Marine Corps. My wife said, now Rod, don't take this the wrong way. She said, Marine Corps has been great for us, but I think it's time, and both of our parents, all of, you know, hers and mine, were getting older. Her mom had actually passed away. And Lori said, you know, it's time for us to go back and spend some time with our parents. And she said, but you go on and do, you know, whatever you want to do in the Marine Corps. And I said, no. I said, I'm with you. We've done it together this long. And so at just 20 plus years, we got out and came home, and it was good.
Where were you at whenever your service ended?
I was actually at Scott Air Force Base up here in Belleville, Illinois. It was they call it a joint tour, where you work with Air Force, Army, sailors, and Marines have a detachment there too. So I was close. When I came out of the Pentagon, I took those orders to Scott Air Force Base, because my wife's mom had cancer at the time, and I got them closer here so they could take care of her.
So after your service ended, did you just come home immediately? Like, did you come to Jeff City?
I did. Yeah, now keep in mind, like, throughout my career, like, when my kids were young and not in school, like, I would deploy for like 6 months to whether I was going to Kuwait, Iraq, Haiti, wherever I was going. And my wife would pack our kids up and come home here to Jefferson City and stay with her parents. And it was good because she wasn't alone.
Yeah.
She had the support of other family while I was again off doing my thing, you know.
How did you adjust to regular civilian life?
You know, after I retired from the Marine Corps, I went straight to work for IBM. And I still work for IBM today. So I've been retired about 10 years, and I've worked for IBM for about 10 years. And it takes a little bit of adjustment. I mean, there's there's a military way of doing things, there's a civilian or a corporate way of doing things, and then at a certain point they mix. Good leadership is good leadership. I don't care if it's in the military or the corporate world. Work ethic is work ethic. I don't care if it's military or the corporate world. And just, you know, just having your integrity and approaching the business world or the military with truth and honesty, that works both ways too.
Yep. What was the hardest part about coming back home?
The hardest part about coming back home after combat is that it takes a while to know that there's not a threat out there. So I came back once. We lived in North Carolina. I would get up about 3 o'clock in the middle of the night, every night. I would go outside. I would walk around my house. I don't know what I was looking for. I was making sure everything was okay. I would come back in, and I would go back to sleep. And my wife would ask me, "Are you okay?" And I'd say, "Yeah, for now I'm okay." But then after a while, I didn't have to make those rounds anymore. I was comfortable, and but I will tell you, for everybody, there is an adjustment period when you come back. And, you know, I think for me, though, honestly, one thing that really stands out to me is for every place that I've deployed to and come back, it's just made me appreciate the United States of America even more. And I mean, I think if everybody has the opportunity to do that and go to these different countries and see the challenges that they face and just see how good we have it here,
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Have you joined a veteran foundation? If so, do you attend reunions?
I have I'm a member of the Marine Corps League here, the American Legion. I don't really attend reunions and stuff like that. I said, you know, I have my group of Marine veteran friends that I stay in contact with, the guys that I have connections with through combat or whatever, and that's the reunions that I do.
How did the service make you relate to others and other things?
I think it, you know, kind of going back to that comparison between the military and the corporate civilian world. It, I mean, you learn a lot of stuff in the military. You know, you learn how to accomplish whatever mission it is that's set before you. You learn how to organize your equipment, your personnel. You learn how to lead your personnel. You learn how to, you know, put your trust and faith in those personnel, train them. I think, you know, my Marine experience has really helped me outside of the Marine Corps in the IBM corporal world. It really has. Anything else?
Well, you kind of answered this, but how do some of the military experiences affect your life? Like, do you have things that you do now that, like, you do it because of the experience you had?
Yeah. So I get up early, you know. I plan. I'm always early to meetings. It drives me crazy in the corporate world when you go to a meeting and you'll have people straggling in. You know, the military teaches you to prepare properly for whatever it is that you're going to do, whether it's academics, whether it's training, whether it's a job. So it's a good experience.
What is something you want to leave for the people who watch this to reflect on?
Oh, I just think that I really hope that everybody will take away that it's a great country, and it's a great country because there are people like me and millions of others who have gone out there before and basically sacrificed for it. And I would encourage everybody to give back and try military service. You know, military service is not for everyone, but it is a great opportunity to see the world, to see the differences in the countries, and I think most of all, to see just how lucky we are as Americans to have what we have.
Is there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't?
I just appreciate you guys doing this. I've enjoyed talking to you guys about it. I like your interest. Thank you.
Thanks for taking your time for our interview, and thank you for our service for our country.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.